What's up guys, I'm Adrian Thompson, and today we're going to talk about 5 different ways to make money while in college. College is like a weird opportunity where you have parents who have money that are willing to spend it to make their kids feel like they're at home, and kids are willing to spend the little money they have on something that's trendy. And since you're in college with the people you're trying to make money off of, you should know your market and your marketplace better than any other business possibly could. And then the second part is, if you don't want to do the entrepreneurial work, there's tons of on-campus opportunities that you can take advantage of to make money. And if you do a combination of both of these, you probably can make thousands of dollars. So that being said, let's jump right into it with tip number 1. So tip number 1 is to actually sell bunk bed ladders. So most colleges will put their freshmen in a small room, and in order to maximize the surface area of that room, they'll raise the beds to where you're essentially sleeping in a bunk bed. Now this can be a great opportunity for you to make some serious money. The thing is, most people, when they go and look at the dorm and then they go back and go to Target and buy a bunch of things, they don't actually think about how are you going to get up to the top of that bed. So they're moving in on move-in day and they go, crap, my daughter, my son can't get to the top of his bed. So if you're outside with a bunch of ladders, you can make a crap ton of money. I actually knew a guy in college who would buy the materials to build these ladders. I think it cost him about $15 each. And he would just load his truck up on move-in day and just have a sign out by the dorm saying ladders for $70. He usually sold them for around $50, but he put $70 so he could barter down the price a little bit. You can just imagine you're gonna have hundreds of freshmen moving in, and almost all of them are going to forget a ladder, and you will become that ladder guy, and people will start spreading your name through word of mouth, and people will be just coming looking for your truck to buy those ladders. But let's say you don't have the money or the skills to actually build the ladders. A lot of people at the end of their freshman year, when they are moving out, they don't actually have a need for that ladder the following year, so they just leave it behind. So if you know the move out day, I know plenty of people will go in there, just take the ladders and put them in their truck, store them at home, or store them in a storage unit until the next move-in day. And then when that day comes, they'll rent a truck for $25 and they can just sell all those ladders that they got for absolutely free on move out day. Keep in mind, you can do this at the beginning of almost every single semester and when people move in during the summer. There's a lot of opportunities throughout the entire calendar year for you to take advantage of these days. So before we go to tip number 2, if you like the concept of this video, consider liking and subscribing. And hell, if you know of a subreddit where this might be applicable, go ahead and post this video there. But that being said, let's move on to tip number 2. So tip number 2 is actually to get involved in ride share driving. Now, what's the most common thing people do while getting their higher education? It's drinking. So a lot of times these kids have to get to and from places and they don't know how to actively do that safely. So if you're willing to avoid drinking some nights that your friends do, you can be their own personal Uber and Lyft driver. Now you can actively go sign up for Uber and Lyft if you want to do that, but I'm thinking you can probably undercut them and develop your own market by just giving a flat rate or a cheaper rate than Uber and Lyft does, and you can just take home the entire money without paying the fees of Uber and Lyft. The best way to do this is to just make a GroupMe or any group texting app saying when you're willing to work and what the rates are for that night. Then people can reply with if and when they need a ride. So I'm setting this up as if you're trying to undercut Uber and Lyft, but keep in mind you can always just sign up for Uber and Lyft themselves. Just be aware that I think your car has to be newer than 5 years old now, and your insurance might go up because you have to report if you're using it for ride sharing driving. There's not really a worse or better one. There's multiple ways to skin this cat. But that being said, let's move on to tip number 3. So tip number 3 is to actually become a photographer or a videographer. Now hear me out, this is going to require you to own or at least have access to a nice DSLR camera. But for you to practice your skills, most of us have a smartphone that is good enough to at least develop those skills. So get with your friends and practice your photography skills and your videography skills on your phone. And the reason I say this is if you're going to charge somebody money for a service, you have to make sure that you can give that service to the best of your abilities. Because if you turn in a product that they do not like, you're going to get maybe 1 or 2 clients. But after that, the word of mouth of how bad you are is going to spread faster than you can get those clients. And you're just going to be killing yourself in the long run. And then once you push those skills to their absolute limits when it comes to photography and videography, most colleges actually have cameras that you can rent out through them for free, or you can look up a place where you can rent out a camera for the day. Usually when I was doing it, it was about $25 to $50 for the day. But as long as you're charging somebody more than what the camera rental is for you, you're pretty much just making profit at that point. And once you have that skill, I personally know people in college who use this skill to charge sororities for their own photography. People do it for graduation pictures. And sometimes you can actually get with the boyfriend of a couple or the girlfriend of a couple, and they will want nice pictures of them just to have for their Instagram or Facebook. Once you have a skill, you can pretty much market yourself as whatever you want it to be. You could be the relationship photography guy. You could be the graduation pic guy. You could be the athletic sports event guy. That's going to be completely up to you with what route you want to go. But developing this skill is something that's very easily monetizable. So something that almost any single college student can get into. And just like photography, videography is going to follow very similar steps. So you want to use your camera to start shooting video, and then use that video that you just shot to practice your editing. Once you're comfortable enough, you can use your phone or a DSLR camera at that point to go shoot fraternity events, parties, sports events, sorority events, and you can make really dope edits that will serve as your own marketing to these organizations. And then once you've proven yourself as a videographer, you can start charging sports teams, fraternities, sororities, alumni groups a large amount of money, because they just have the money to spend for you to make a really good 5-minute video for them. Keep in mind though, you don't have to stay within the school system. So once you develop your videography, photography skills, you can go to the local businesses around the area. And a lot of times these people are willing and wanting help, and they will pay a decent amount of money for you to make a ad for them or to make a short little video promoting their business, especially if you're going back to your school and getting them more customers. Now, obviously, everything I've said so far has required you to have a truck, car, or a camera. So the next tip, I'm going to group a lot of things together that should have zero startup costs. So tip number 4 is any work study that you can find on campus. I wanted to group all of these together because they don't have a startup cost and they're all essentially the same thing. Personally, I was very busy in college, so the work studies that I did and looked for and the work studies I suggest are ones that you can easily study while working. You got to be careful because some of these work study jobs tend to be more work than it is for you to study, but in college, you can definitely find work studies that are more study than they are work. I definitely did, and I suggest you look for them too. I personally worked in the athletic department for 2 years while I was in college, and it was some of the easiest money I've ever made. I essentially did my schoolwork from a desk and spoke to nobody for 4 hours. Nobody checked on me, and then they paid me. It was minimum wage, but they paid me for those 4 hours, and I did that about 5 days a week. Keep in mind, you're not going to get paid a lot typically for these jobs, but actually some of them will pay more towards your tuition than what they will pay you. So if you are somebody taking out student loans, ask them and see what they're offering in terms of that, because it might be something that is very beneficial for you in the long run when it comes to student loans. Typically, the most common work studies that you have at school are alumni associations, the library, the athletic department. My college itself actually had a yard working work study, which a lot of people did because it paid better than the other work studies. So tip number 5 is actually to start a YouTube channel. Now, my biggest regret in life is not starting YouTube earlier, because my school had all the resources I needed. I just never made the jump. I was pre-med, I was playing soccer, I had a startup company I was running, I still partied a lot, and I felt like I definitely had time to still do YouTube on top of all of that. You obviously won't get paid when you first start this, but being in college is going to be the easiest place for you to get subscribers, get followers, talk about content that people that you know will actively listen to because you're plugged into it. It's going to be easier to get to the point where you can monetize YouTube while you're in college. So it's just something I definitely suggest everybody try to do if you can do it. And once you do get enough of a following, you can monetize that following through ads or sponsorships or merch to where you could end up making more money than any of the other tips that I've suggested up until this point in the video. Obviously, people are gonna make fun of you for doing this or trying it. You just have to buck up and not really care about what other people think. So that's it for today's video. If you guys liked it, go ahead and like and subscribe, and remember, it may be hard now, but it doesn't always have to be. I'll see you in the next one.